Hai, welcome to Kremés podcast.
Podcast yang paling receh and garing, but maybe informative too, depending on the day.
I'm T.
And I'm A.
Semoga podcast ini bisa nemenin lo.
And hope you enjoy the episode.
Halo teman, welcome back to Kremés. My name is T and I am back in Perth after what seems like a whole age. I have been in the US, I'm now back in Perth, currently recording while I'm in hotel quarantine. I have no idea what day it is today, lost track, but it's probably like, I don't know, day 10, day 11 of 14 days of quarantine. My sanity is slipping, but honestly, one of the only things that's keeping me sane is, doing these recordings and having this great chat with you, A. So, how have you been, A?
I mean, we can't lie. We just have a whole curhat episode for the last 1 hour, guys. But it's just not recorded, It's just us talking about our life. So I have been well for the sake of curhat, for the sake of Kremés episode recording. I am doing well. Nothing big. But I get to meet T from outside the car park. Just looking at her hotel window. It was amazing. Get to deliver some good food for her because food are meant to be shared.
Thank you.
But hey, I think it created a chain of reaction, eh?
Yeah, for sure.
A lot of people sending you stuff. That was so good.
You started it. Thank you. Honestly, I swear I keep telling people that coming here is kind of like, I guess, bougie jail, or kind of like being like a political prisoner on house arrest or something, because it's just I'm not allowed out of the room for 14 days, so there's only so much you can do, right? But I'm trying to stay sane,
and you don't get outside air
exactly.
as well.
I've just been breathing the same udara for like almost 11 days now. So thank you for coming. Thank you for your your wave from outside the window and for your food delivery. Appreciate that. But so I'm back in Perth now, spending quarantine, catching up on things on the home front, including messages from friends and family. And one of the messages I received was actually from a close friend of mine, and she's getting married soon. So she's Indonesian, and her husband-to-be is like Australian, jadi orang bule, yeah. And originally they had plans to do 2 weddings, one in Indo, one in Australia, to respect both families' cultures. But obviously now with the pandemic, they're changing everything. But she's actually been sharing a lot of her planning process with me, and that's actually, she said something really interesting. She said, while obviously there is a big difference of the 2 cultures when planning these ceremonies, she felt that the whole philosophy of both weddings felt very different. And when I was in the US, I was actually reading this really interesting post in Subtle Indo Traits about how this guy was asking his mom about her opinion on traditional, I guess, big Asian weddings versus smaller, more intimate gatherings. So I thought today we could do like an Indo versus Aussie wedding edition. What do you think, eh?
Yeah, for sure. Kayak, soalnya kita kemarin lihat juga kan satu Indonesian Trade Day tuh gue langsung banget kirim ke T. Gue yang kayak, what do you think about this?
Yeah.
Karena emang benar banget kita ada punya konotasi atau punya sebuah what is called a perception gitu kan. Kalau misalnya di Indo tuh wedding harus gede, atau misalnya harus ngundang si A, si B, si C gitu semua. Tapi hari ini kita mau ngebahas ini juga, kudos to T by the way, karena dia research banyak banget tentang ini untuk kasih kalian informatif juga, nggak cuma kita sekadar ngobrol juga. Kita bakal bahas sedikit tentang kayak adat budaya Indonesian weddings, tapi juga kita bakal talk about the difference in Chinese Indonesian weddings, tapi juga kita juga mau bahas tentang the Western weddings, right? Because there are so many rich culture. I think there are a lot of like richness in their culture, tradition, symbolism, makanya bisa sampai wedding yang sekarang ini gitu, karena ada banyak ceritanya kenapa harus gini, kenapa harus gitu. Kalau dari Indo wedding ya Teh, what is it that when you research, what can you find that is really really worth talking about?
Yeah, so like Ovs getting married is like a big deal, right? Regardless of what culture you're from, getting married is a big deal, and you would want to celebrate it with your loved ones. But in a general sense, depending on your cultural background, loved ones, and when I say that, gue pakai kayak tanda kutip or quotation marks, loved ones can be a broad term because I know friends and relatives who've gone all out and invited like 1,000 people to their multi-day ceremonies, and those who've just gone and married with like just their parents. So look, it's your day, right? When you get married. So ultimately you decide what to do, and to each your own. But I've attended more Indonesian Asian weddings than Western ones. So I guess my experience may be a bit biased, but I guess amidst all of the pomp and sort of flamboyance of Indonesian weddings, there is a lot of symbolism and richness, and there's a lot of reason behind all that flamboyance. So I thought to share some tips on navigating through these common customs based on my experience and based on, what I found on the internet. Plus, probably do like a breakdown of traditional Indonesian weddings for each major culture or ethnic group, because that may help anyone out there who's planning to attend one in the future, as well as comparing it with, I guess, my experiences attending some weddings in Australia or more Western weddings, hey? So let's start with some basics, yeah? Jadi kayak the invitation, which is obviously if you are, not in charge of organizing your own wedding, that's the first thing you will hear about. And Indonesians definitely follow the saying of like the more the merrier. So unless it's specified, it's usually kind of like acceptable to bring friends who are not directly invited to the wedding, or to join friends who have been invited. But obviously that really depends. Sometimes they have like a strict table sort of count and then all that kind of stuff. So it really depends on the situation. And although couples do try to give enough lead time before their big day, it is actually surprisingly common to receive an invitation just days before the wedding as well. So there's like two different sides to it. It's more, I would say like nowadays, there is a whole big flourish to it. So people do go all out and spend money on like getting the paper and getting like something really pretty, like a pretty design done up. And usually di Indo sih banyakan undangannya dikirim ya, kayak as in like it gets mailed to you. But given the modern situation nowadays, sometimes people send it electronically and you get like e-invitations. So yeah, no, it's interesting, and it's really entirely up to the situation. In terms of attire, for most Indonesian weddings, formal traditional wear is recommended. So gue sih sering kayak kalau ke kondangan, ingat my dad selalu pakai batik. As in, like, sometimes he would wear a tuxedo, he would wear a suit, but the shirt, the actual button-down shirt, instead of wearing a white shirt, it's usually a batik shirt. But it's kind of like the nicer batik, which is, like, usually made out of silk or, like, some more kind of, like, bougie material. But, yeah, no, basically, Indonesians love a reason to dress up for anything. So, especially for weddings, it's, like, the perfect time to go all out. And so most women will don the Indonesian traditional kebaya or sarong, and different styles on different regions, are usually worn. But a formal Indonesian-inspired outfit or a Western dress will blend right in too, I guess. I mean, people are really just being flexible nowadays. Women are not required to cover their hair, and this is obviously relating to sort of like the more Muslim culture. But while it is generally advised to come with your shoulders and upper legs covered, because we are, understanding the Muslim beliefs and respect sort of, their traditions. You can play it by ear depending on the family and the style of occasion, and obviously the religion they follow, because obviously religion's like a big part of the particular wedding ceremony. So for example, you might see Indonesian women wearing classy cocktail dresses, or like, even more kind of like ladies yang lebih ngetren ya, they would usually like, they even wear like a crop top and they would mix it with like a sarong. So they kind of like a blend of like traditional and modern, which is interesting. What are your thoughts on kind of like, I guess, gifts and sort of, I guess, alcohol and stuff?
Yeah. No, I guess to just continue with what you said, that is so true. Kayak beneran banget, kerasa banget bedanya Indonesian wedding sama sini ya. Kalau misalnya tentang invitation gitu-gitu tuh kayak di sini tuh benar-benar strict banget gak sih? Kayak you harus RSVP berapa orang itu tuh dari jauh-jauh hari gitu loh. Lo nggak bisa sembarangan untuk langsung masukin orang gitu karena juga biayanya juga beda, dan di sini lebih ke malam itu pasti selalu fine dining gitu, resepsinya tuh udah bukan yang prasmanan kayak kita di Indo gitu. Tapi juga attire bener banget sih, kemarin gue malah kaget banget karena waktu gue pulang ke Indo, coba dong katanya sekarang tuh orang Indo tamunya hire photographer sendiri
Sumpah?
For weddings. Jadi tamunya bring their own photographer biar mereka bisa take their photo without having to worry about kayak photographer pengantinnya gitu loh.
Right.
Jadi kayak tamunya bring their own photographer. Dan I mean we all already know pada makeupnya juga pasti ada makeup artist, ada salon gitu-gitu untuk pergi ke weddingnya kan. Kalau di sini kan enggak, rata-rata notabene kita ngerjain sendiri atau our friends will do it for us, right? So that is so true. But yeah, untuk seperti yang Teh bilang tadi, untuk gift dan alkohol. Okay, gift, it is not required. I don't think it ever been required, but it is recommended though. Kalau Indonesian couple biasanya kita pakai kayak amplop merit gitu atau angpau yang kalian masukin gitu, dan itu bisa tergantung social economic statusnya kalian aja gitu. Ada yang bisa ngasih berapa ya itu yang mereka kasih gitu. Tapi biasanya cash terus dimasukin ke dalam amplopnya, terus biasa dikasih di depan waktu lagi mau tanda tangan buku. Terus masukin ke dalam kotak amplopnya ya. But I don't know, there's like a lot of stories about that. Kayak ini hati-hati ditipu, takutnya amplopnya tuh jatuhnya miring, nempel di kotaknya lah gitu-gitu. But that's another story, am I right? Tapi kalau misalnya di Aussie mungkin lebih ke ada yang namanya bridal registry, which is atau wedding registry. Jadi pengantinnya sendiri tulis barang-barang yang mereka mau untuk sebagai present mereka gitu. Jadi daripada lu kasih uang, mending lu beliin salah satu barang ini aja karena udah pasti kepake gitu. Tahu kalau misalkan daripada kalian beli barang, mending kalian beli barang yang ada di list. Tapi kalau misalkan kalian nggak tahu barang apa yang mau kalian beli, takut sama orang lain juga yang punya listnya, then maybe just give them the angpao atau give them the envelope and cash as well. I think I have gone to a wedding here that they ask for the red envelope instead of presents. Cause biasanya duitnya ya buat bayar balik modal weddingnya, atau bisa buat honeymoon mereka, atau bisa buat rumah-rumah barang dalam rumah mereka kan. Nah kalau alkohol kata aku sih di Indo lebih jarang ya kayaknya minum alkohol, mungkin lebih ke wine aja, ataupun kadang sampai nggak di serve juga. Jadi kayak biasa kalau misalnya mungkin juga dengan adat budaya kita yang lebih berkeagamaan, kita nggak terlalu banyak minum makanan keras, jadi minuman keras, jadi mereka lebih ke teh, es teh manis, ataupun jus jeruk, jus mangga gitu-gitu. Tapi untuk ke Chinese Indo mungkin kita do drinks. I think the adult drink wine, usually red wine atau champagne, depending makanan apa yang ada waktu lagi resepsi. But in here, I think they drink more. Literally, sometimes you go to a wedding for an open tap, which means free flowing beer atau free flowing drinks yang udah dibuka sama pengantinnya, so you can just literally get any drinks you want. And I think in here emang budaya minumnya itu lebih besar, tapi bukan berarti kita mabuk-mabukan juga ya. Jangan sampai salah gengs yang dengerin. Kita minum tapi kita udah tahu karena kita udah sering minum, kayak jadi mereka tahu batas mereka tahu their limit and stuff like that. Tapi I think that's all for the general stuff. So that's just from the overview of invitation, attire, gift, sama alkoholnya. Sekarang kita mau bahas lebih dekat lagi tentang the ethnic group ya. Maksudnya kita nggak bisa bahas semua ethnic group di Indonesia karena jujur Indonesia we are so saturated with a lot of a lot of adat dan budaya. We just gonna cover some of the big ones atau some of the ones that we know that we heard already. Dari Jawa, and dari Bali ya?
Well, let me start with Javanese because Javanese is, I guess, the ethnic majority of Indonesia. So 56% of Indonesia's population comes from the Javanese group. And, when I talk about these things, obviously, all of them generally have the same objective, right? Like, you're all going to get married, but there's maybe subtle differences that really reflect on the cultural values of each group, which is really interesting. So I guess for Javanese, when you attend a Javanese wedding, it's a good way to really acclimatize with the nation's culture because, it's the majority. And Javanese weddings usually begin with a formal meeting and an agreement between the couple's families. And then obviously that's the time when they actually set a date, decide on the budget, and divvy up the tasks between which family is going to do what, essentially. But from what I've understood, Javanese weddings are actually multi-day celebrations. Most of them, it's sort of, only lasts 3 days. It starts with the siraman, which is like a really nice sort of opening ceremony where the bride and groom's parents shower them with water and flowers, and this symbolizes the last time they are bathed by their parents, which is actually really touching. It serves as a reminder of how they were cared for when they were younger. And then after the siraman, which means basically to, gimana ya? Siraman apa ya? To shower, siram. To shower, I guess. That's the Indonesian word for it. After the siraman, the bride is dressed up as a princess, and then she's assigned to a room, and then she's accompanied by the groom who will wait. She's accompanied by female relatives for the entire night. So basically, she's not allowed to see the groom. And then meanwhile, the groom will wait outside her home, symbolizing that he will be a doting and patient husband throughout their marriage. And then normally the siraman is reserved only for the family, but it is possible to be invited if you're sort of, outside or not related to the family. Day 2 of the ceremony is when the main sort of wedding occurs, when all the guests join the celebrations, and obviously in line with the couple's religion, an official will legalize the marriage, and then they sign their wedding documents. And after the paperwork, the couple performs a series of rituals, which includes throwing betel nut leaves. I completely forgot the Indonesian word for betel nut, but it will come to me, hopefully. But they throw nut leaves at each other to ward off evil spirits. And then finally, they seek blessings from their parents and their elders. And then after that, it's followed by a reception, and the couple should eat together for the first time as a married couple. And then guests are invited to eat afterwards, and then they leave after refreshment. So people often skip the ceremonial part of the wedding and I guess arrive about sort of like 30 minutes to an hour before the reception, because that's when they take turns to greet the couple between sort of eating. And then families often arrange for traditional entertainment during the mingling. So I guess that's sort of, in short, Javanese style weddings. I'm sure you'll be able to explain the general customs of like an Indonesian Chinese wedding.
Yes, definitely. So with Chinese Indo, right? We are scattered around Indonesia. Most of them is Catholic or Christian or Buddhist, I guess, right? So their ceremony is a little bit different, but also kind of similar in a sense. Kayak kita tetap ada yang namanya respect to the parents, ada yang namanya wedding reception, ada yang namanya the wedding itself, the holy matrimony kalau misalnya orang Kristen atau orang Katolik bilang. Jadi biasanya on the morning of the wedding, the bride's family invite the groom to her home for a tea ceremony. Jadi kita ada teh ceremony di mana groomnya datang ke rumah bride-nya tapi bawa hadiah-hadiah kecil juga. Jadi kayak ada kotak-kotak hadiah gitu yang harus dibawa dari untuk datang lah ya, basically gitu. Dan kadang tehnya itu di interchange sama angpau. Jadi biasanya tuh kayak contoh misalnya aku punya cici gitu ya, jadi cicinya aku nanti berdiri di depan, terus nanti akunya datang ke dia untuk kayak salim gitu, kasih teh, nanti cicinya in return kasih aku angpau gitu loh. Tapi you go through that to the whole hierarchy of your family. Jadi dari the oldest to the younger, to the oldest to until you. Terus kalau misalnya kamu punya dedenya yang bakal salin ke kamu harus kasih angpau ke dedenya.
Right.
Gitu.
Right.
That's what I know. Terus kalau nggak kamu ke orang tua kamu juga sama. Terus kayak just show some respect. Usually there is some bowing, but not bowing because like bukan kayak menyembah ya, tapi kayak hormat aja gitu. Kayak kalau misalnya orang-orang Korea yang ngomong selamat hari Happy New Year kan mereka baunya sampai bawah gitu, similar to that. Nah, terus biasanya dilanjutin dengan misalnya kalau yang Kristen atau Katolik ya mereka ke gereja, ada acara gerejanya di mana di situ mereka say I do-nya. Kayak would you marry me? Bukan would you marry me
Will you take this man?
For better and worse. Yes, will you take this man to be your husband? I do. Will you take this woman to be I do. Itu yang biasanya itu di gerejanya. Nah, kalau mungkin yang Buddha mungkin mereka ke temple ya. Yang buat that's what I heard sih. Nah, terus receptionnya, nah itu baru yang menyerupai, mirip-mirip banget sama yang namanya Western reception. Jadi antara kamu pergi dari gereja langsung ke lokasi receptionnya, atau biasanya ada kayak sesi tidur siangnya gitu, terus nanti baru resepsi lagi malam. Atau juga ada yang mereka bikin acara gerejanya itu sore, jadi langsung lanjut ke dinner malam. Jadi ada beda-beda timingnya tergantung pengantinnya, tapi biasa ini yang baru tergantung ya. Tapi what I know, Chinese Indo tuh biasanya sukanya gede weddingnya. Jadi kayak ini lu bisa invite until 1,000 guests, 1,000 orang gitu. Karena ini bukan hanya dari pengantin punya temen, tapi juga dari kayak maminya punya temen, papinya punya temen, maminya punya temen TK lah, papinya punya temen TK lah, grandpanya punya temen, grandmanya punya temen. Itu apalagi kan dari udah contoh misalnya dari sini sekarang kan dari sisi cewek ya. Sisi cewek maminya udah temennya, saudaranya, keponakannya, cousinnya, bla 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 bla. Papahnya, saudaranya ke saudara. Terus pengantin cowok juga sama. Maminya punya saudara, punya bisnis, teman bisnis papi gua, teman gini semua jadi satu. Makanya bisa banyak banget orangnya. Dan ya ini kalau itu resepsinya. Nah, jadi bener resepsi itu tuh lebih crazy ya daripada waktu pagi di gerejanya. Di gerejanya mungkin kayak family inti aja, tapi resepsinya itu yang lebih dibuka. Dan ini tuh ya tau lah ya kita Sweet 17 di Indo kayak gimana ya. Jadi ini tuh double the portion of Sweet 17. Bisa ada lantern, bisa ada kembang api, bisa ada bisa ada band yang nyanyi, bisa ada bajunya gini, bajunya gitu, pokoknya banyak macam deh. Tapi I think for me it's nggak tahu sih asal muasalnya dari mana atau ada konteks apa, tapi yang all I know is I think because ini wedding tuh pengennya kan emang sekali seumur hidup ya. Jadi they go all out for this one time and then that's it. But also I think there are some that might think that it's a taboo if you to get divorced kind of thing, right? So they wanted to make it like marry once, marry big. But also it also can be a lot of like symbolism gitu, kayak dari tes seremoni itu ada artinya, dari potong angpau juga ada artinya, gitu-gitu semua tuh ada artinya gitu. Tapi ya mirip sama yang di Indo, gift-nya lebih mungkin dari sisi angpau ya, jarang banget yang barang. Kalau barang itu lebih ke Western country sih kayaknya. Jadi basically not gonna lie, duit yang kamu kasih ke angpau sebagai pengantin is not really their gift, but it's just basically to pay what you eat, to pay for the wedding, that they're gonna go back.
That's really interesting actually that you mentioned that whole taboo thing, because like, okay, I mean, based on what I've seen, like in general, I guess that in a way makes sense as to why I see a lot more Western couples getting divorced. Like, I don't know if this is related at all, but like I just see, like I find that it's a lot more commonplace for Westerners to get divorced than than I guess Chinese. I don't know. Then again, mungkin even if Chinese couples do get divorced, maybe it's because it's taboo that they hush and they don't make it big news, you know? Whereas like kalau orang barat kayak ya kalau emang ya putus aja gitu, kayak you know mau nggak mau kayak that's just how it is gitu kan. So I don't know, that's like a really interesting point that you mentioned that. But anyway, let's move on. That was really good. So besides what A mentioned with Chinese Indonesian ethnic group, there is the Sundanese ethnic group, and that's actually the group. So my girlfriend who I mentioned earlier, she's from Sunda, so she's Sundanese. And the Sundanese group are actually also from Java, but they are traditionally from the western part of Java. And one of the main differences between them and the Javanese is that a majority follow the Sharia cultural and religious practices. So I guess they also perform like the siraman and stuff, but it's not actually a traditional Sharia practice. And they actually have other more, I don't know, very traditional customs. During the ahad nikah, or the marriage component, a scarf is draped over the bride and groom's heads, and that symbolizes the union of their minds. Essentially, they are two parts of one whole. And after the formal wedding, the couple also receives blessings from the elders. And then while under the cover of usually an umbrella or a tent in a way, unmarried guests are actually showered with coins, gifts, turmeric rice, and sweets. And all of these are basically symbols of good luck. And this is followed by a series of games that are meant to teach the couple how to live harmoniously. And how to essentially, continue their marriage ties and fulfill their marriage vows until, death do them part, essentially. And finally, the couple is fed by their parents, signifying the last time they are living under their parents' wings, or the last time that they're being cared for by their parents, which is very similar to the siraman that we explained earlier. And then after the traditional sort of solemn vows and everything, there is that usual reception, and that's when the more, the more larger guests, the broader guests can congratulate the couples personally and eat and celebrate and what have you. Aside from Sundanese region, everyone is probably more familiar with, especially if you're coming from Australia, with Bali. Please, everyone, Bali is part of Indonesia. Bali is not a separate country. The Balinese people are primarily, they primarily practice Hindu sort of customs. So there's a special Balinese Hindu sect, which is a mixture of, I guess, Hinduism, Buddhism, and animism, if I'm correct. The Balinese have 3 marriage ceremonies, and in the same vein as the Hindu style, they are very melodramatic. So the first component is called the ngerorod, or the, I guess, elopement in a way, where the bride is actually kidnapped from her parents' house and brought to a pre-arranged spot where she apparently has to act like she's distressed. And then the bride's family will arrange a fake search party who, after searching high and low, will not be able to find her. And then the bride and the groom will be performing rituals to the gods and start formally living as husband and wife. In a few days, both their families will meet and agree on a price for the bride, or essentially, in a way, I guess, a dowry. And this will be followed by customary celebrations, as they are already considered married in the eyes of the gods. And the ngerorod is a more economical option, actually, of getting married without much extravagance. Essentially, I guess it is like an elopement, if you will. The second way is called mapadik, which is more aligned to the more common Indonesian wedding ceremonies. This time, obviously, the groom must formally ask for the bride's hand in marriage, and once permission is given, the bride and groom will have wedding prayers at a temple conducted by a priest and then legally married. And after this, the guests can take part in, obviously, the traditional pompous ceremony and the dancing and the music and then the food and the whole shebang. And then the third ceremony is reserved for families who have no sons, and instead they give away their daughter to the groom. And the bride's family, in a way, gains a son. And it's another more economical option because as the bride and groom, they end up being sort of blessed by a priest in a simple ceremony without sort of that pomp and that circumstance of, the ceremonies. But because most ceremonies are held at a temple, guests are required to wear sarong or a waist scarf, and then, they have to wear a top that covers their shoulders and their upper arms because that is the customary way of being respectful and not sort of, being inappropriate, I guess, with your dress and to respect the gods. So that's essentially sort of, I guess, the more traditional aspect of things. But obviously, now in this modern age, people have modernized these traditional ceremonies. So yeah, that's just, I guess, a quick little flavor of the traditional styles. So that was definitely a cultural overload on Indonesian wedding customs. So let's briefly touch on, I guess, a typical Australian or more Western wedding customs. Obviously, it is all relative, and there are many different cultural practices in the European culture as well. Hey, have you attended any Australian weddings recently?
Yes, I have actually. Okay, mine, I don't know if it's an Australian wedding or is it like a Chinese wedding, Chinese Australian. I don't know how to say it.
Yeah.
But it was happening in Australia. So I think the difference is like what we said before. The sizes are definitely different.
Yeah.
I think with us in Australia, it's a lot smaller, and people are happy with it being smaller as well. And it's so funny. It's actually the other way around. They put a big holy matrimony, which is when you say I do, but a small reception instead.
Right.
So the reception is usually more on like your closest friend, your family, and like even your family, you don't really include your big cousins in a sense.
Right.
It's just a smaller version.
Yeah.
And they usually have it in wineries, I think. Especially in Perth, wineries is the place to go for any wedding, basically. It's so beautiful. You got the beautiful landscape. And yeah, so a lot of mine, the holy matrimony is really big, actually, because everyone can just come and just enjoy usually it's outdoor, and then they just do the whole reception. They have... They don't really, I know that they probably did the tea ceremony depending on what culture that they are in, but it's not with a guest. So tea ceremony is only with your family.
Yeah.
So we weren't there, but they did went to, during the wedding, we all stand up, rise for the bride came in, the groom already wait at the front, but because we're Christian as well, so we have a little bit of singing worship songs, and we have a little bit of verses being exchanged, but then after that it's the whole they usually write their own vows, so it's the whole reading their own vows and just saying I do, and then after that usually the bride and groom will go out, everyone stand up and clap for them, and then within minutes they will come back in to take photos, basically. So then everyone slowly, depending, they will call out the group. They're like, okay, the group A, and you would probably already know what group you are, so they will call it, like, for example, bride's family, please come to the stage. So you all come to the stage, take photo with the bride and groom, and then you go out from the stage, and then groom's family kind of situation, so it takes turns. And after that we usually have just little refreshment, lunch sort of thing, where you just drink and you eat pizzas and stuff like that. But the one that I've been to, they do the nap. So what it means, they go home first, took a nap, enjoy time with their family, and then they have the dinner at night. So at night they have a fine dining with your name on the table. You got wine, you just have this beautiful little dinner. You go dinner, there's dance floor. By the end of the night, everyone is on the dance floor dancing their self off, and that's it. A beautiful wedding.
Yeah, so I found, like, from my experience, totally agree with you, I found most of the Aussie weddings I've attended are usually single day events, a lot more chill, less flamboyant. Like you, they're mostly in like wineries or like, kind of like, I don't know, some kind of like open space or like a, an abandoned shed or something, because the current aesthetic was kind of like, rustic and, makeshift and kind of raw and very down to earth, I guess, kind of vibe. But I totally agree with you in terms of like the church ceremony or the official wedding ceremony is usually bigger, because that's when they invite, more their relatives, and that includes more older senior relatives. And then I guess the reception is obviously, because the couple, usually the couple are more youthful, and they reserve that for like their youthful friends, so it may be a bit smaller, because it's just essentially meant to be like a night of celebration, drinking, dancing, eating, kind of things that maybe more senior attendants would probably not really appreciate, or they probably can't really, like, I don't know. But I usually find it a lot smaller as well. But that being said, kind of like, it is an interesting dynamic. I would say, it really also depends on the religion and sort of culture. I mean, I have been to a wedding where they were Australian, but I think the groom's parents were Scottish, so like they had like a whole Scottish agenda to it. But I really, when you mention sort of like eating and fine dining and names on tables, that was interesting, because most of the experiences that I've had attending weddings in Indo, it was buffet style. So you kind of just rock up to this this ballroom in a hotel. And yes, sometimes there would be actual tables with your name on it, and it's, fine dining, and food gets, served at your table, multi-course meal. But most times it's just kind of like open seating. You can sit wherever you want. You can mingle with whoever you want. And the food is usually served in like sections around the room in buffet style. So it's really just, kind of like all, one for all for one kind of situation. And it's usually the case if there's a lot of people invited to the wedding. So it's like if it's a very big party, and by all means, it's usually a lot easier to just, cater it buffet style. If it's a smaller number, that's when they can really do the sit down, fine dining, multi-course meal. And that's usually the case when it comes to Australian weddings that I've attended so far, because again, the size is just, a lot smaller. While it is a lot more chill, I guess, not as many days, maybe not as many ceremonies, it's, definitely still a very meaningful and a very important event, and sometimes less is more, sometimes it's really nice to just keep it really simple and keep it really focused onto the bride and the groom and what the day is about. And it might also be a lot more economical, and you can spend more money on your honeymoon, or, you can save money from, having to kind of just, I guess, waste it all on a very, very big ceremony. So I guess ultimately, what are your thoughts on this? Kind of like, big Asian wedding versus smaller wedding. Because again, I was inspired to do this chat because of that post that I saw on Subtle Indo Traits, where this Chinese Indonesian guy was really just asking his mum what her opinion is, because obviously he may have assumed that his mum would want him to have a very big traditional Asian wedding ceremony, because that was, I guess, just the assumption and the thing to do. Everyone was always doing big weddings in Indo. But surprisingly, his mom was just super chill about it. She was just like, ultimately it's your wedding. You do whatever you want with it. You can save money, you can go all out. So she was very flexible, which is a very refreshing and interesting perspective. So really keen to see your thoughts on it, eh?
I think, for me it's a bit biased, because I have 11 cousins from each side of the family,
right,
to start with, and I have like 5 aunties on my dad's side and 6 aunties on my mom's side. So my family is already big, but I think I would do it to the extent of that. I think that and my grandparents and my some grand aunties that I know, I guess, but just that. I think it would be great. And I think I'm more confused and worried about the amount of friends that I need to invite, because the typical, like, if you invite A, then you have to invite B, then you have to invite C, then you have to invite D, and so on and so on.
Right.
Because of course I do want to invite some of my friends from Indo, definitely still friends with a lot of them and still have a good relationship with them. Would love to have them on my wedding day, but also at the same time I have friends in Australia who I am still in contact to, still meet them every day. So it's a big group of people from both sides.
Right.
So I think that's the bit that I kind of struggling with, I think. But I think at the end of the day, the only thing that I wish on my wedding is just having a lantern.
Aww.
I just want the lantern like tangled. That is all I wanted. So even if it's a small wedding or a big wedding, if I have that bit, I think I'll be happy.
Yeah.
But I think also because we're such half, right? A part of me do think that there I might need to do 2 ceremonies. Either I do 2 ceremonies, one in Jakarta and one in Perth, or I do one in Bali and just have the both together.
Yeah.
I think that would be the best way, probably.
Yeah.
But I also want the cold weather, so I'm a bit scared if I have to have it in Bali. I'll be a grumpy bride for the whole day because I can't do heat. But yeah, well, how about you, T? What is yours?
Not gonna lie, I've actually never thought about my own wedding ever. Like, I know it's such a, I don't know, like, maybe it's like a stereotypical thing that like every girl must have at least kind of like imagined what her dream wedding would be like, but it never crossed my mind. And like, I guess sort of instead of that, the only thing I guess about my wedding that I've ever thought about was if I were to get married, I want to make my own wedding cake. It's just so funny. Like, ever since I was 3, I've made like a solemn declaration that I was like, yep, I'm gonna make my own wedding cake, because obviously back then I was actually really interested in becoming a chef when I grew up. Obviously that didn't happen, but I am still a foodie, so it's interesting to sort of, I guess, see if I live up to that promise. But when I was little, I wanted like, a big cake with like lots of layers and like, all that amazing stuff. But I never actually considered how big a ceremony I want it to be. I think there's a part of me that's like, obviously I want to go back to my roots. I want to respect my ancestors and where I come from, and probably do like a more Asian sort of side to the ceremony. But at the same time, I'm also a pretty like laid back kind of person. I don't want it to be too extravagant. So maybe like you, I might do it. Like, I might do one in Indo, I might do one in Australia, just because it's like, that's how I, kasih hormat gitu kan to like my relatives who may not be able to come to Australia, or even if I do, I don't know, who knows? I may not get married in Australia, who knows? But I think there is still a part of me that says, okay, I should at least fulfill just pay respects and just fulfill that sort of component of like being able to like, acknowledge my relatives who are in Indonesia and do a ceremony in Indonesia at least, and then have a second one maybe somewhere else. But who knows, hey? Like, my friend currently who's planning her wedding, she is doing it over Zoom, which obviously I guess cuts costs a little bit. So instead of having it doing 2 separate weddings in 2 separate countries, she can blend it all together and do it just one big Zoom call. And she actually sent sort of invitations to, and it's like the cutest aesthetic ever. So like, she, instead of having, obviously the location, it's like a Zoom link, and they're making it really nice. So I look forward to attending that wedding and seeing what components of both Indonesia and Australia they're going to combine in their Zoom wedding. Definitely a first experience for me, but it's interesting.
Yeah, my friend just got married as well, and then she did hers through live Facebook.
Oh, nice.
So they're all watching it live.
Yeah.
I mean, we're already doing that for church, so I don't see why not for a wedding that
right?
take
definitely.
exactly the same amount, right?
It might bring more people, into it, right? Because like, it may be more accessible for people because they can just sit in their pajamas in bed and just attend it, and just make it kind of like a nice thing without having to be so hurrah about it, because some people are not all about that, flamboyance. But it's been a really interesting conversation about weddings. I mean, it was just such a random thought because I had this friend chatting to me and I read that post on social media and I was like, you know what, let's talk about this, let's see what we can do. But I, for one, I was really actually fascinated when I was doing my research about like Sunda wedding, Bali wedding, Chinese Indo wedding and all the differences. But, obviously the thing in common between all these weddings is that it's just meant to be a day to remember. One, to legally, formalize that you're obviously husband and wife or you're married spouses. But, it's just meant to be, it's really it's just fascinating to see how different cultures symbolize and what they do to make this day really special. And how to celebrate marriage in their own ways. So we hope that this has been an interesting, episode for you guys to tune into, and an interesting way to open up your eyes to different cultures. And let us know if you've ever attended a Balinese wedding or a Chinese Indo wedding, or if you've ever if you've attended a wedding recently, what it was like. What are your thoughts on big Asian weddings versus a more smaller intimate wedding? And we hope you're interested in these sort of topics, and let us know what you want us to talk about next.
Yeah, thank you so much for listening, and hope you gain so much more knowledge, I guess, buat yang lagi ada di Perth atau lagi ada di luar negeri, bisa tahu apa yang biasa dilakuin sama orang-orang Indo, dan orang-orang yang ada di Indo juga bisa tahu apa yang kita mungkin karena kita udah tinggal sini, bedanya di mana, dan lebih mengerti juga kalau misalnya kalian diundang, kalian tahu apa yang harus kalian pakai atau apa yang harus kalian lakuin, so also not, do anything. But yeah, thank you so much for listening. We'll see you on the next episode next week. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening.
Jangan lupa like, comment, and subscribe, and share it with your friends.
I'd love to hear from you. Please reach out with your comments, stories, and even questions on what we should talk about. See you in the next episode.
Bye. Dah.